In this one, we're going to talk a little bit about some advanced customization features. We did cover some of the customization features in prior videos, particularly like report setting, like automation and stuff like that. But these are some of the more advanced settings that there are possible. And so they're really found under two places. If you go to edit, and as I mentioned before, most of the customization is going to happen in these 5 areas here. And we've already talked about these 3 areas. So let's talk about groups a little bit. And then we'll talk about enterprise reporting, dashboard configuration. So if you look at groups, as you know, we do track not only hardware, we do track a lot, every job and every user at multiple levels. So as a user, you can create a group of users, and really think of it as like in the sense of jobs or users. Think of it as if you're creating a group, it's more like an application. So let's say an application has 20 jobs, and you want to see what the application is doing to your system. So you can actually create a group to do that. So when you go into these group options, you see users, jobs, and so forth. So let's just open up jobs. So I've already created a couple of groups, and this is certainly one of them. ODBC is pretty prevalent these days in most applications. And in this case, what you give it is a group name. And so the group name literally is ODBC. Underneath this is where you're going to put all the job names. In this case, I just have Q, ZDA, SONet. If I really wanted to, I could add an ODBC. So you can come in and you seek and add a new group or new item, verify, some of these users or something. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new entry, and I'm going to select here, add a new item. I'm going to select jobs. So now I'm going to add a new item. And so here I'm going to say QZDA, SS. INIT. So SS is the secure ODBC. I'm going to hit enter once and hit enter twice. And I've just added that job to the group. And you can see I created a group called Banco. And this happened to be a bank, obviously, that I am checking an application. And these are all the jobs that they were concerned about. So I actually created a job. And once you create a group, I'll show you how you would use these. But you can create library groups, system groups, data center groups, potentially if you have a very large customer. We also, if you are an MSP provider, you can actually create a group of frames for your customers or a group of LPARs. So let's say you have a customer A who has 6 LPARs. You can actually create a group of those 6 LPARs for reporting on that one particular group. So I'm going to show you, there's jobs right here, and so I'll show you systems. So in my case, I have a lot of system groups because we do a lot of service work like performance analysis, problem determination, capacity planning. So I have it by customer. So I use this feature a lot, and I can show you how we use that. But that's basically how you can create a group. So you can add a group. Just make sure you click on one of these radio buttons here, and then you can modify or add groups and so forth, right? So that's how you create the group. Now, what do you do this with? So for example, here, let me go down and you find these are all the customers. So right there, for example, is a customer who you can see the group name here is Fleet Pride. And if I can do things like I can right click and I could select a group, I could add a group, I can consolidate a group, I could delete a group, and I can basically, if I wanted to select all the LPARs on a given serial number. So this is one of the ways you can certainly manage or how you would use a group once it's created, right? Now, as far as the graphs are concerned or reports, if you come over here and you go to reports, monthly summary, and user, you'll see this option called groups. So you're going to give it a group name, and we would then create any of the metrics, CPU or disk or IO or faulting, whatever, by the whole group. And the same goes for jobs, right? And again, one of the ways you use this, if you come back over just as a reminder, come over here to graph, report options, and say selection parameters, you'll notice this right here. This is job, subsystem, and group. Now there's another video that goes into this in detail, but you can notice that you can put a job name, a subsystem name, or a group name in here. And as you can see, in this case, I actually wildcarded a job name in this case. So in my example, if I wanted to create a list of ODBC workload, I would say put that group name ODBC in there. Now, one thing you obviously have to be careful about is having a job name and a group name being the same. So you want to try to avoid that, obviously, because we do track jobs, and you don't want the group name to have the same name as the job name. So that's one of the things you can do with this report, right? The other, as far as customization is concerned, right? The other customization option is under graph, way down at the bottom. And these are options, and you can see, for example, refresh data. So some of our customers like to have for example, a CPU graph in their main data center, wherever their operators are. You can actually have a CPU graph. Now these, when you're talking about refreshing data, we're always talking about current day. So we're talking about current day graphs because that's what gets refreshed every interval, whether that's 5 minutes or 15-minute intervals. So when you're referring to refreshing a graph on a screen automatically, right, you're talking about a current day graph. In this case, you can say do it now, or you can certainly say I want to do it every 5 minutes. So this is what most of our customers, if they want a graph constantly being refreshed, we would do that. You can also, this is where we do shift selection. As you know, by default, we collect 2 shifts, first shift and second shift. Technically, there is a third shift. Most customers don't use that feature, but if you are interested in that, you can certainly call support. We can help you out there. You can hide the trend lines if you want. So you see right here in this graph, we have trend lines. So if that's distracting or somebody doesn't want it, you can certainly hide it. You can actually show future growth, which is sort of like the extrapolate button. And we can actually put a percentage growth out on the side here if you want. You can actually change the graph type. So by default, we've selected the type of graph that best suits the metric or the data. But some customers, instead of an area graph, want a bar graph or an area graph or a line graph or a dot graph or a pie graph. So you can see how you can actually change the graph type if it makes sense. So this is how you do it under this option. The vertical grid, you can see that I selected every month and every year. So you can see these vertical lines, which makes it easy to see, months or weeks or whatever. So that's what that's about. You can click here and say, show me a graph of all LPARs. If you select this option, if you just click, we're going to drill down versus clicking the drill down button or pointing to a date and saying right click and drill down. You can actually set this, and if you click, we'll just automatically drill down. This is logarithmic scale. This is obviously only good for very large numbers. So let's say you're looking at CPU milliseconds, and you could be using millions of milliseconds. And if you went from 0 to 1,000,000, the graph would get pretty small, right? So in that case, maybe you want to use a logarithmic scale on the y-axis versus the x-axis. You can put the cursor to say, instead of a hand or an arrow here, you can make it a crosshairs. And like I said, by default, most of these graphs are stacked. Now you can certainly, at any graph, you can certainly unstack them. But a lot of the times you're looking for totals. That's why we stack it. So that's sort of how that would work, right? So that's sort of a brief overview of some of the customization features, advanced customization features with Performance Navigator.